Towards the ends of October 2023, Meta just had their agency summit, which is an event that was hosted online. Think of it as a webinar where Meta's announcing their pathway for the future. So they're announcing kind of what they've done over the last few months and how can advertisers or agencies best support their clients, aka other brands and advertisers. So with that being said, I've watched the entire agency summit and I want to share with you my most interesting finds and kind of summary of this event. And the goal with this entire video is to help you best prepare to run great ads this 2024. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Justin. I'm the founder at paidadvertising.com, an e-commerce marketing agency helping elevate thriving brands by simplifying e-commerce growth. So let's get straight into it. Here are my key points from the Meta Agency Summit. In fact, right before I get into my key points of the Agency Summit, I also want to talk about Meta's Q3 reports because they came out roughly at the same exact time they hosted their summit, which also has a lot in play with what they discussed in that summit in itself. So Meta's revenue year over year for Q3 2023 is up 23%, which is great. It's basically the best growth they've had year over year since Q3 2021, which was a whopping $34 billion quarter for Meta, which is their record essentially since they first became a publicly traded company. Now, one of the key points that was also mentioned in that earnings report was that for the first time ever since their launch, Reels are finally becoming revenue neutral for Meta. Which in other words, what that meant is that the time people spent on Reels to the detriment of spending time, as an example, in stories or feeds, actually didn't cause Meta to lose revenue. Because in the past, or initially when Reels were first launched, the fact that there was like less ad placements or less ads shown in Reels and more on feed and stories, and more people spent more time on Reels, meant that Meta actually lost revenue on the Reels themselves, because the more people watched Reels, the less Meta made money because the less people saw ads in general. Which in other words now means there's enough ads volume in Reels themselves in order for Meta to become revenue neutral with Reels. So now if more and more people keep at the same pace to watch Reels, well, because of the amount of ads that show up between those vertical videos on your feed, Meta essentially is making enough money to make up for the lack of people on stories and feed placements. And I think one of the most interesting finds also of that is one of the segments that contributed the most to this rise in revenue is online commerce. So e-commerce essentially caused this surge primarily in ad spend. And finally, the Chinese giants, so Temu and Shein, have also dramatically increased spend on platforms like Meta. I mean, Temu, I don't know about you, personally on my feed came out of nowhere in the last year. And it's actually good because if you look at those two giants, both Temu and Shein together are reported to spend roughly $3 billion a year on ads simply on Meta, which in other words means they're responsible for a very big portion of Meta's ad revenue, which is good and bad. Good in the sense that, well, now there's kind of new big giants coming into Meta and spending a lot more than a lot of other companies in the world. Bad in the sense that this causes the CPMs and the bids to rise for everyone. But enough said about this earnings report. I now want to get into the meat of the announcements made at the Meta Agency Summit, because one of their first main segments was about 15 minutes spent about Reels. They basically talked about Reels. They said 190 billion Reels are played every single day, which is quite the big number if you think about it. They talk about the fact that Reels are additive, which personally I would replace with addictive. Anyways, a little play with words, but in the fact that the way that they've spoken about it, it's they said that like it's their fastest growing content format. Out of all the placements they have, the one that keeps on growing faster and faster month over month has been Reels. You've seen that with what I just said about their earnings report too. And they made the remark that they recommended every advertiser repurposes their pre-existing feeds or stories content for Reels, and recommended more people essentially advertise on Reels, given that there's more and more users on there. And they had this frame which I found interesting. They said walk, run, sprint, and on there they said like add Reels to your campaigns via Advantage Plus placements or manual. Then they show kind of the safe zone that a Reel would have. It's like optimized build for native Reel ads, so 9x16, etc. And then sprint, which I found quite interesting because they say right here, test for creative elements driving stronger performance in the campaign. Polished versus UGC. Brand-led versus creator-led. human versus non-human, which I thought was very interesting based on the recent wave of content I've done out here, because I've tested a lot of those, right? UGC, which is a little bit more scrappy, versus kind of polished content, more kind of native to TV ads if you want, or stuff that's again kind of more on brand, than brand-led versus creator-led, right? So that a great example to think about that is branded partnerships. You could do it both ways. You could have creator first or brand first. So it could be like, let's say Justin with paidadvertising.com, or paidadvertising.com with Justin is running an ad. And then human versus non-human, so AI ads, which are now kind of coming a little bit more and more. I see more and more personally on my own feed ads done by kind of these AI avatars show me through a product or through a service. Now, this next slide I also found quite interesting. They say creative is the variable, and then they spent about 5 or so minutes talking about how creative is the most important part of somebody's ad strategies of right now, and that if there's one place you want to put your efforts into and that you want to test more of, is at the creative level, which I've said it many times now. Meta has also confirmed it many times last year, but that just goes to basically re-emphasize the fact that creatives are now increasingly important on the platform. Now, this other thing that I found quite interesting is the conversions API gateway setup, which essentially they're recommending that agencies set up all of their clients through their own conversion API gateway. So they actually say like, hey, agencies, if you want to sell a new service, then build yourself one conversions kind of gateway account on Amazon Web Services, have all of your clients' pixels funnel through your own Amazon Web Services server, and then you can offer essentially like conversion API setup for any client that wants it. Yes, you can do that, but then it also makes a lot of clients dependent on you as an agency. I don't know. Hey, it's just saying like this is the way that they framed it right there. And also the fact that they spent so much time talking about the conversion API gateway, I think that means there's something to look into. There's a lot of partners that Meta has, like Shopify as an example, which offers a native integration with the conversion API. But Meta also knows that a bulk of their advertisers aren't necessarily on Shopify. They're either on custom solutions or other platforms that might not have these partner integrations enabled. And Meta also knows that the pixel is somewhat useless as of right now. So you need the conversion API setup. And one of the best ways to set it up if you're not on a partner integration is through the conversion API gateway, essentially, which is a manual setup that would work no matter what platform you're hosting your website on, essentially, and no matter what objective you're advertising for. Would it be leads? Would it be calls? Would it be sales? So whatever it is. Now, the longest segment of this entire presentation was actually spent on, guess it, AI. So it was 20 minutes about AI 2.0, essentially that Facebook called it. And from there, they spoke about how they would integrate more and more AI into the workflow. In fact, it was a bit of an Apple-like segment of their presentation of them talking about how they're investing into bigger and better data centers, into customized chips and GPUs. In other words, what they're saying is that they're building the hardware and the backend to support an increase in demand on their AI capabilities. And the capabilities they were talking about was the enhancements made to your ads. So the video and photo enhancements made to ads, as an example, which are powered by in their servers. That like a computer has to run that, right? So they have to have the manpower or the hardware in order to run these if more advertisers are using it. Same thing now that also Meta announced that in January 2024, there was going to be an even simpler wave of campaign changes coming up. So they're simplifying further the amount of campaign types and objectives available on Meta. So the more it is simplified, the more that it relies on AI. And the more it relies on AI, the more hardware it takes for them to run that, which means, again, they have to invest in a better backend infrastructure to support this demand. They also spoke about the AI's creative sandbox, which essentially was something being tested right now as a beta by a few different advertisers. Which, think of it as like a ChatGPT or DALL-E natively to Facebook, which was quite interesting the way they showed about it. So there's like text variations that can be done automatically by AI. So you give it like an initial prompt or your initial piece of copy, and it produces a bunch of variations for you to pick from. You can also generate backgrounds. So as an example, you can have like your catalog ads on a white background and give prompts to Meta so that it generates specific types of backgrounds for your ads. Also, there's also image like outcropping that they've announced. So let's say you have a 1:1 image and you want to run that as a 9:16 ad, it can automatically like fill up. So it's like generative AI, a little bit like Photoshop as an example, where if you have something and you want to fill the screen further, so Photoshop calls it like a content aware fill or generative AI, whatever essentially is the terminology for it. But Facebook's going to have the same thing now, where any like 1:1 or 4:5 asset that you want to run as a 9:16 will automatically be filled up top and bottom with whatever elements are on there, and kind of continue this entire fill on screen. They also showed stats about how many marketers are using AI-based like text or image generating tools already in their ads. So Meta's like, why not integrate those into our existing platform? They also kind of said the reason behind it AI 2.0 was that AI 1.0, they're kind of saying like, look, a lot of people think that AI is new. It's not. We've been using it for years, pretty much since we started this business. They're like, the fact that your ads are making their way through the right people, even if there was like more granular targeting before, that was AI. And now they kind of went ahead and talked about how their AI was getting better at like detecting harmful content on ads and making sure the policies were enforced. Which between the two of us, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but hey, let's see. And the last part about AI that I found quite interesting was their powered machine learning they mentioned, which was kind of saying the flow of how like basically how the machine learning works on their backend, which was like data. So you need high quality data via the conversion API to be sent back to Facebook for it to learn about your audience. And then that data feeds essentially your creative, which I'll read you exactly what they said, are like a variety of creative assets that span diverse motivations and formats, which is quite interesting because I've been speaking a lot about like creative concepts and how you need to have different desires, market awareness levels. So they're kind of saying like, have more volume of creatives that is testing kind of different markets and angles. Then through, again, the machine learning, simplify media outputs through automation solutions, so standard enhancements and kind of all the automated placements and stuff that Meta does for you. And measurement, learning agenda with key business questions and plan to test and incorporate insights, and then kind of fuels itself back and forth, which is quite interesting. So in other words, it starts with having good data. If you don't track properly, none of it is actually going to work. And second of all, put all your focus at the creative level. None of it here talked about like targeting or making sure you have the right campaign structure. They literally had like 2 of their 4 mini little like icons on there talking about the creative. So build creatives that is targeted to the person you want to find, have different awareness levels and desires in your ad. Let Meta help you enhance your ads through the power of AI, standard enhancements, automatic placements, and any Advantage Plus features. And finally, look at your data, analyze, make decisions from it, and then just kind of repeat the cycle. And the last bit I'll share is about storytelling, which I also found quite interesting, which basically they talked about 10 minutes roughly about like storytelling and about like you have to develop your own personal narrative as a person or as a brand, which I think leads into 2 points. One, the creator economy, which we already know that people relate better with people, right? So if you have like creator first, so if you're creative first, well, you probably are creator first, right? There's going to be a lot of people or creators shown into your ads. So develop a certain narrative around that is kind of one point that they discussed. But the latter is how like a brand story is important. And I think, why is this relevant? Well, the market is getting more and more sophisticated. The more AI kind of takes over, the more the playing field is leveling up. Like people can't make mistakes really or not. Like it's much harder for somebody right now to fuck up targeting than it used to be. Because everybody, like a lot of that now is being taken care of. So it means like the barrier to entry is lower. More brands or more marketers can now effectively target the right people, which means more and more people like you and I are seeing ads on our feed that are relevant to us by a myriad of different brands. So how does a brand stand out on our feed? Well, we have to kind of hook people through storytelling. If you look at market awareness levels or sophistication stages, the last sophistication stage is identification. Like people have to identify with your brand at a much deeper level. You sell the brand more than the product. You sell, like that's the same reason I posted a few stories about that lately on my Instagram, but people talk about, if you look, let's say at like luxury brands like Louis Vuitton or Gucci or Yves Saint Laurent, look at these 3 brands as an example. They sell similar price point, similar stuff if you want in terms of like the way that the products are made, but all 3 have a different image and slightly different clientele. And somebody doesn't necessarily buy it because of the quality. They like the logo, they like the branding, they like the feel that it kind of gives them. And I've had this conversation over and over, given that I'm primarily working with a lot of fashion brands. Would it be clothing, jewelry, or even like skincare brands? A lot of them are becoming commodities. So the people relate more with the brand than they do with the product. And I think it's important right here that if you remove the targeting, level up the playing field, put the emphasis at the creative level, and you find yourself in a much more sophisticated market than it already is, then truly the importance of a brand or some form of personal image to your business is becoming increasingly important. So if you want to learn more about these market awareness levels and desires and sophistication stage and how can you actually like weave that into better ad creatives, given that that's where the ad platforms are moving to, check out this video on the channel next up, which is going to teach you a little bit more about how you can weave that into your ads. And with that being said, if you are looking for a partner to run your paid ads as an e-commerce brand, click the link down below and book in a call to speak with our team today. On that note, I'm going to wish you guys an amazing day. Check out other videos on the channel for some more useful e-commerce marketing tips, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.